everyone, this is Jennifer with DP Addiction Adventures, and I just thought that I would do another drill with me tonight, and I wanted to finish my Storytime YouTube tag. If you want to know what numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 questions, which is a time I lied to my parents, a time I stole something, a confrontation I had with a teacher, or my best gift ever, check out my update and short drill with me video. I think it's a couple videos up as far as that's concerned. So there's I think 11 more questions left, and I just wanted to get this this going and try another, now that I have my tripod, another drill with me. I will say I've answered these before. However, I did not realize that my phone wasn't recording. So that's why there was a long pause between the drill with me's, because I just kind of am bored of my own stories in my own life. And so I just took a pause, did a couple of the unboxings, and, you know, kind of got to know you guys better and the community. And so now I'm ready to hop back into my stories. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope that you're sitting there with your own diamond painting and listening, because I enjoy doing that. I actually sit and just turn on YouTube and listen to your stories and your drill with me's as I'm drilling. And so I just find that comforting. I love hearing about lives and other families and what's going on. So the first question tonight is a time you tricked a sibling. So I am the oldest sibling of 2. My sister is 4.5 years younger than I, and she is very dependent on those around her. She has a heart of gold. I absolutely love her. I love the relationship that we have now. But growing up, I probably wasn't the nicest sister. I was jealous of her and the attention that she got from my parents. I was always considered, you know, the one that was independent and could do things on her own and didn't need the help. But in reality, I really missed that. So there was a time where your mom could say, go and get in the car, and you could run out and get in the car, and there was nothing about it. And so my mom did that, and I was probably 8-ish, and she was 4. And so we ran out to the car, and she was inside, you know, getting her purse together, her glasses, you know, locking up the door, all that kind of stuff. Probably putting, you know, the dog in the kitchen so she didn't destroy the house, and so on and so forth. So here we are in the car, and that particular day, my sister must have been annoying me, and she had blonde hair when she was younger, and my mother has dark brown hair, and my dad has almost black hair, and I have dark brown hair. And so I got this idea to torture and trick her because she had blonde hair. And I was like, hey, it's like, did you know that you were adopted? Now, I tell this story because this story has nothing to do with my beliefs of adoption. My family, my husband and I are actually in the middle of adopting a child. This was because of my sister's dependency on the family. I knew this would be a hot button with her. So please do not comment, do not think negative of me, or if you do, keep it to yourself. But this is just a time I tricked my sister. And in my head, because nothing had been explained to me about adoption at the time as an 8-year-old, when adoption was not as big as it is now with a lot of the psychoeducation that we have now on what it means to be adopted. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I'm stepping off of it now. So we're in the car and I'm like, hey, her name's Ashley. I'm like, hey, Ashley. I was like, did you know that you were adopted? And she's like, no way. And I said, yeah. I was like, mom has brown hair. Dad has brown hair and brown eyes. I have brown hair and green eyes. You're blonde and you have blue eyes. I was like, where do you think you came from? And I was talking about she's 4, so my parents hadn't shown her all the baby pictures and everything. And I'm like, have you seen any baby pictures of you in the hospital with mom and dad? And oh my gosh, I really laid into her. And by the time my mom came to the van to get in, my sister was sobbing because this was me as a bad 8-year-old, adoption sound like she didn't belong to her family. And she was like sobbing and, Mom, I'm adopted, and just on and on and on. Now, she didn't know what adoption was. I didn't really know what adoption was, and I totally tricked her. She thought she was adopted. In her little mind, she thought that meant she didn't belong. Now, we know in reality that's so not true. And so I got in the worst trouble ever because I was successful until my mom came. And then we had a long talk and we learned about adoption, and that even if she was adopted, she was still our child, and da 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 da. So that is a time that I tricked my sibling. And to this day, we kind of giggle about it. But every now and then my sister, is like, you were so mean to me. So yeah, that was me. She also had her spurts too, but this is a story time about me, not about her. So the next one, your boyfriend, girlfriend cheated. I only had 2 boyfriends in my life. So I had the boyfriend before my husband, and then I had my husband. So I'm hoping, God willing, that no cheating has happened. So I'm going to go and skip that one. I know I haven't personally cheated. And my husband knows if he ever does, there would be words, but we won't go there. Tell of a time you broke up with a good friend. This one was hard for me to recount and relive, but I had a friend. Her name was Heidi. I was a sophomore. She was a freshman in high school, and we were like inseparable. We met in a church youth group. We went to the same school, and we were always at each other's houses. And I mean, to me, she was like my best friend for life. And because of that, I wanted to help her feel better about herself, because at that time, she really wanted a boyfriend and she didn't have one. And so I had a friend, and I convinced him to write a letter and not sign his name, but just so it had guy handwriting, that a guy liked her, and it was a secret admirer. And I put it in her locker, and for a couple weeks, she was all like, oh my gosh, somebody in the school likes me, oh my gosh. And so I just kind of kept up this charade of, maybe, like, no other notes were written or anything, but maybe there's a secret admirer, maybe she'll find out, knowing the whole time that there was no admirer. Now, in hindsight, of course, that was a stupid thing to do. But I thought that I was doing something to help her. And, you learn from your mistakes. And so it was December. I remember it clearly. I right before exams, and I had a chemistry exam, and this guilt just kept coming over me of, you have to tell Heidi the truth. You have to tell Heidi the truth. And so I caught her right before the bell rang, and I said, Heidi, I've got something to tell you. I said, please promise me you're not going to hate me. And she's like, why would I ever hate you? You're my best friend. We're like sisters. And so I told her the truth. And I still remember her face like it's burned in my mind. I mean, talk about flashbacks. I still have flashbacks over this. And her face just broke. And she just was like, how dare you? And she just broke up our friendship right there. And she said, I can never trust you again. We are no longer friends. And that was it. And the bell rang, and I had to go take my chemistry exam. And all I could think of was my world was falling apart. And I just kept thinking during the exam, like, she's got to forgive me. She's got to forgive me. She will, she will, she will. And I just bursted into tears during the exam because chemistry was a 2-period class at my high school. The exam was 4 periods long because our exams took 2 periods so that they could get the testing in. And so for 4 hours, half a day. Now there were breaks in between, but I just was like sobbing, and the poor teacher had no idea what was going on. He probably thought it was hormones or something, and I ended up failing the exam. I found out later, but I ended up asking him if I could go to the nurses station. I mean, I was beside myself. Like someone had died, because they had in my heart. And I thought, okay, I can fix this. Like, I can get her trust back. I can apologize. I will do anything I can. And no, she wouldn't allow me to. And it was done. And it was over. And I lost my best friend. And I saw her in the hall every day at school. I saw her at church. I saw her in youth group. She wouldn't talk to me. Still to this day, it hurts to talk about it. And I ended up becoming, probably 3 or 4 years ago, Facebook friends with her, just for acquaintances, thinking, okay, maybe I can write her a message or something to say, you know, I was dumb and I've been living with this. I mean, that was in high school. So I was like 16 years old. So that was 20 plus years ago. And it still is like yesterday in my heart. And, you know, you hear these stories on the radio of people who carry weights around for like 70 years and write a letter, and the person who reads the letter says, oh, I didn't even know that I caught, you know, that this was going on. So yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll talk to her, maybe I won't. We're just acquaintances on Facebook. I haven't really done anything else with her. But yeah, so for the next 2.5 years, I watched her from afar, and I would pray for her, and I would, you know, send her birthday gifts, and sometimes I would decorate her locker, and she didn't know it, on her birthday. And just like, I still cared about her. I still wanted success for her. I wanted her to be the best that she could be. And I still want that for her. So yeah, that was a time that I didn't break up with a good friend, but she broke up with me. And so yeah, and that's it. So let's get out of that sad point and move on to the next question, which is a time you embarrassed yourself playing sports. This one, as I was thinking about it, and even in the first video that never filmed, I don't know a time that I ultimately embarrassed myself. I'm sure there were. I played soccer for 10 years. I played basketball for 6. I played softball for a year. Yeah, so I'm sure At some point, I embarrassed myself, but I don't have anything that really sticks out as far as that's concerned. Sorry, guys. All right, the story how we got our pet. Okay, so if you've watched any of my videos, you've heard me talk about Zoe. She is our boxer mixed with Great Dane. She is a little over 2 years old, and we got her when she was about 10 weeks old. So the story is that we had a dog for 12 years. Her name was Kaylee, and she passed away just of old age. We had to take her in and put her down. She was having trouble breathing and different things. And so it was a sad time for our family. And my daughter was around the age of 8. The dog had been part of our family before she was even born. It was her best friend. She had grown up with this dog. And so it was a really hard time, but my daughter is in a travel soccer league. And so we are gone a lot once soccer picks up on the weekends. And it was getting a bit pricey to get a dog sitter because we didn't want to put her in a kennel. And so we're like, hey, this is a great time for us to pause and break. And we're just going to go at least a year without a dog. Get the dog hair out of our house. Get a little bit of our budget taken care of from all the dog sitters we had been paying. And so we were in agreement. However, this person, myself, I am a dog lover. And so I kept looking at dogs online. And my husband knew this. But every dog I saw just didn't have that face that said, take me home. Like, it was just somebody else's dog. It wasn't my dog. And I thought maybe it's because I was going through the mourning process. Like, I kept looking for, like, that Kaylee face, which was our previous dog's name. And so our dog Kaylee had passed away in May, end of May. We had a July 4th vacation to Washington, D.C. planned. And so we drove there. My parents came with us. We stayed in D.C. for a week, had a blast, and then drove them back to Ohio. We're in Michigan. Drove them back to Ohio and stayed a couple days there to unwind. And the day that we were getting ready to leave, I was on a pet website. And this adorable puppy stuck out to me and just gave me, like, I just was like, this is it. This is the dog. And I showed my husband, and he was like, oh, Jen, he's like, we are not getting a dog. Why do you do this to yourself? I thought we agreed. I'm like, I know. So I ended up texting. We get in the car. We have a 6-hour drive. We had already driven, like, I think it was like 8 or 9 hours the day or two before. We were exhausted from our family vacation, and we're driving back to Ohio. We have a 6-hour drive ahead of us. And I text the phone number. And I'm like, hey, I'm wondering, how much are you charging for this dog? We live in this city, which the city they were in is an hour away from us. And I'm like, so I'm thinking to myself, it's not going to work out. This woman's going to come back. She's going to say the dog's already taken. She's going to say, are no holds on the dog, because there was no way we could pick the dog up that weekend. And she's like, well, actually, the dog that you're looking for has already been taken. But I have her sister, and her sister is my favorite. Her sister is just this sweet, submissive little puppy. I've been hanging on to her because I thought if nobody picks her up from the litter, I may keep her. And she's like, by the way, I'm coming to the city, and she said where we live, this evening to drop off the sister. So if you want, I can bring this dog, the dog that I hadn't seen yet, but she said it was like her twin. I can bring her to your city and you could just meet her and see if it's a good fit. And I said, well, and this is all through text. I said, we're driving back. We're about 6 hours away. We had a family vacation. I need to talk to my husband. He doesn't even know I'm talking to you, and see if that'll work out. So meanwhile, he's driving, has no idea that I'm texting back and forth. And so I start talking to him and saying, hey, honey, I reached out to that dog owner of the dog we saw at my parents' house, and this is the story. And I told him everything I just told you. I said, would you be open to, she's already coming to our city. Would you be open to just seeing the dog? I said, this is how much she's charging, and 100% is completely up to you. Like, if you say no, like, no regrets. And I really meant it. Like, no regrets. I won't hold it against you. I'm not gonna be upset. And he, like, was driving, so he couldn't even look at me. And he was just like, if he had, I'm sure it would have been a, seriously, John, like, I thought we were in agreement and you went rogue. And I do this a lot. The poor guy. The fact that he accepts my craziness, like my diamond painting addiction and my flying off the handle with the dog. I like to plan, but then when I do get a spontaneous thought in my head, I just go with it. And he's learned to accept it. And he's like, okay, we will see the dog. So meanwhile, I'm texting her back and forth, asking her to send me pictures of the other puppy. And it looked identical to the first puppy. And so then we got home at 7 p.m. at night, unloaded our van, literally within 20 minutes after we all went to the bathroom, got back in the van, drove up the street to see this dog. And of course we took the dog home. Like, the dog was just instantly part of our family. And so we just laugh. Like, we initially bought our house within 2 hours of seeing it. We got our dog, the first dog, almost within 3 hours. We got this dog, within 6 hours or 7 hours. So funny. So that's how we got Zoe. And she is supposedly this calm, sweet little person. And she is definitely submissive. She wants to please you like no other, but it's pleased to a fault. So she will over please you, and she'll pee all over the place and all that kind of stuff. But we're working through that, and she's getting much better. So if you want to know more about Zoe, check out one of my previous the Great Reveal video. I talk about her when I show my custom that I got of her. And you'll also see, I'm sorry, I didn't show the custom, but I talk about her and you'll see a video of her. Forgive me. I'm getting all my videos mixed up. Okay. So, next question, a holiday catastrophe. As I was trying to think of this, I was going back and forth going, okay, catastrophe. Is that like drama? Is that something funny? Is that something sad? Like, what do they mean by catastrophe? So my daughter overheard me the first time when I went through this video, and she's like, Mom, you didn't answer that question. I'm like, yeah, I didn't really have an answer. And she was like, why don't you tell the time of, my birthday when this X, Y, and Z happened? I know it. And I was like, well, it's not really a holiday. And she's like, well, it's a funny story. So I think I'm going to tell you that story. So bear with me. So my daughter was turning 3, and we had family in town, and I like to make and decorate her birthday cakes. and she wanted a bear cake. And so I have this 3D bear cake pan. And I read directions, but I scan them. So I don't read them fully, and that's my own fault. So I make this bear cake, and you're supposed to you're supposed to remove it, wait until it's completely cooled down. Then you're supposed to put icing in the middle, because it's like you make this side, and then you put icing in the middle, and then you put the bear together, and then the bear is actually sitting up. And then inside you're supposed to have, like, before you put it together, a couple toothpicks, and that kind of holds it, and then you decorate the outside. Well, I let it cool down for about an hour, thinking that was enough, but because the bear was so deep, I mean, each side was probably a good 4 inches on each side before you even put it together. Excuse me. If you watch my videos, you know if I talk a lot, I start yawning, so forgive me. But I will always say excuse me. So anyway, I waited about an hour, and then it was really late at night, and my parents were there, and I'm thinking, I'm exhausted. I don't want to wait forever and a day. So I slap it together, and then I start decorating. And I literally spent probably 2.5 hours decorating the outside of the cake. I used a star tip, and it was a black bear with the brown nose, and then brown in the center of the paws, and then it had it had some color in it somewhere. And she had a stuffed bear named Boris. So the cake's called Boris. And so I did not realize you're then supposed to stick it back in the fridge. And so it was just sitting on the counter, which is a big no-no, because the icing is going to get warm, and then the cake is going to slide apart, right? So my mom gets up to go to the bathroom and to make coffee, first thing in the morning. It's probably maybe 6 o'clock. And so my daughter gets up too, because she gets up with Grandma and Grandpa. And so while my mom's in the bathroom, she goes into the kitchen to see her cake. And all of a sudden, I'm fast asleep, exhausted, because I was up to 1 o'clock in the morning decorating this cake and cleaning the house and preparing for family party. And in my family, I always feel like my house has to be spotless when my family or friends come over. It's not relaxing to me. I mean, I have an amazing time, but hosting a party is not relaxing. And so all of a sudden I hear this sob, just this complete, when you're a mom and your child starts sobbing a certain way, you this mother's instinct, and your blood runs cold. Now, she wasn't screaming bloody murder. It was a sob. And I jumped out of bed, very dizzy from jumping out of bed, and ran to the kitchen. And my daughter is on her knees, and she's like, Boris is dead. And I was like, what? And I'm trying to figure out, I'm in this fog state, and I'm thanking the Lord she's okay. And my mom walks into the kitchen what is wrong? And what had happened, I don't know if you can see this, is the sides of the bear had split, and the head had fallen down the middle. So the bear was decapitated and split in half. It was as an adult, it was the funniest thing now that we look back at it. But her little heart was broken. She was just like, Boris is dead. And I wanted to cry too, because I had worked, hours and hours and hours on this cake. It was 6:30 in the morning. Everyone was coming at noon. And I'm like, okay, I have to bake a cake. I have to, like, I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh. And my hands hurt so bad from squeezing that, like, I mean, over and over and over again. I mean, it was probably 2,000, stars on that silly cake. So my dad woke up. My dad bakes a lot of cakes for us. And so he's like, Jen, you go shower, you go get dressed. I will bake the cake. And then we ended up putting it like in the fridge, in the freezer, and we got it cooled down. My mom read the directions. We did the toothpick thing, and then I, like the speed of light, just started squeezing like crazy, and my hand was just throbbing. I mean, you talk about sacrificing for your kids. I mean, I gave birth to this child, and now my hands are killing me. So my husband, who works for a computer company, he termed it Boris 2.0. So I found that pretty funny. So all the pictures, we didn't take a picture of the decapitated dead bear. We didn't even think to in our panic state. But when we see pictures of Boris, cracks me up, and we talk about Boris 2.0. So that was my experience with that cake. Needless to say, when she turned 4, I bought a Costco cake, which is kind of like a Sam's Club, depending on where you're at in the country. And it's a sheet cake, and I bought it like just with white icing, no decorations. And then I decorated the top of it with my own decorations. And I'm like, okay, I didn't have to bake it, but it's semi-homemade. Like, at least I decorated it. But I needed a year off. I'm like, I'm sorry. I want it somewhat homemade for you, but I can't do it again. It was definitely a tragedy. So it wasn't technically a holiday, but family were all there, and it felt like a holiday. So, yeah. Do you guys do cakes? Have you ever had a cake disaster? I grew up with non-store-bought cakes because our family didn't have a lot of money. I also grew up in the era where a lot of people went and had their birthdays at McDonald's and then had a store-bought cake. And so I was jealous of all my friends, but my friends were jealous of me because my mom took the time to decorate and make these amazing cakes. I mean, considering she was an amateur, like not a professional cake decorator, she did amazing, and I had some of the best cakes. And I want that for my daughter too. And so we have a lot of fun now. She's 10, so she gets to help me, and we really do a lot. This last year we took a break, and they, instead of cake, they did a waffle bar. So that was kind of cool. So anyway, I'm off topic. Sorry, I could talk all night. Next question. That time you tried out for something. All right, funny story. Again, this goes with I'm a planner, but yet I tend to be spontaneous too when I get an idea. So I was in high school. It's probably my senior year. I was in choir, but not in the kind that you try out for. And so a couple of my friends who were really accomplished singers at the time for being in high school, we had this competition choir at my high school. And so I thought, I'm going to try this out. But I had not even thought about it. And so I had no song. I didn't know what to do. And it was a cappella. And I'm not a good singer. I'm okay. Like, if you stand next to me at church or something, you're not gonna, plug your ears. But, sorry, didn't mean to move you so much. But in no means am I set out for choir competition. But I decided I was gonna try. And so I picked a hymn. And when I picked it, it's because it's the only one I had memorized in the time because I hadn't prepared. Excuse me. If I drink any coffee to keep me awake, then I'm going to be awake all night. So I'm trying not to drink that. Um, so I wasn't prepared as far as knowing a song. And so I had to pick something I knew. But little did I realize that halfway through this song, because I had not thought through it, were a couple notes I couldn't hit. And so I literally, no warm up, no practice, get up there and try to sing this hymn. And halfway through, my voice cracks. I start coughing, I start crying, and I run out of the room. I was so embarrassed. And bless the heart of this other person who was a friend of mine, the next day just encouraged me. And I'm like, okay, next time I should think this through. Like, just because my friends are doing it, and I probably should have been a little more prepared. And I didn't even want to be in that choir, to be honest. It just was like an impulsive thing. And so yeah, I tried out there and of course did not make it. And that's okay with me. I was more just embarrassed of the people that saw me. But I'm sure nobody remembered after. A lot of times we think people think more of us and remember more than they actually do. And so I try to remember that myself. Like in the moment, they may be thinking, but most of the time after the fact, it's not a big deal unless you bring it up. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, I remember that time when you, and then you're like, oh, why did I bring it up? So yeah. All right, we're getting there. Something that happened while camping. Okay. So I really hope my parents don't see this video because this story is going to be about them. When I was in college, my mom wanted to do some more family vacations. But at that time, because we were paying for college and a couple other things, we just financially couldn't pay for something huge. And so they went out and they bought a tent. And my mom is not a camper. And so she bought one of those. I mean, granted, this was 2002. So, I mean, right now it's 2018. So, this was like 16 years ago. Now, camping comes and goes, but all my friends go camping. It's like a really cool thing to do, get back with nature. But I camped as a Girl Scout. So, the only camping I knew before we did this was literally like you build your own fire, you have a tent, you have a sleeping bag, and you go to the bathroom in the woods. Like it was true camping. My mom, however, wanted a tent, which is great. So she bought this 4-room tent. It had the middle room and then there were 3 rooms off the side, and then you could pull down this curtain to make a wall for each room. She also bought 2 air mattresses, queen size, one for her and my dad and one for my sister and I to share. They bought a flushable toilet that could be in that 3rd room. So my parents got a room, my sister and I got a room, and then the flushable toilet, crazy, was in this room because she's like, I have to get up like 3 or 4 times a night. I'm not walking down the path to the toilets. I don't, da 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 da. So I remember as a college student sitting at the picnic table next to the fire thinking, what has my life become? As my mom is standing on the other side of the picnic table curling her hair with hot curlers that she had plugged into the plug at our site. My dad is flipping pancakes on the electric griddle that he had plugged in to the plug at our campsite. They had a box fan plugged in because it was too hot. And people, as they drove by, like honked their horns and waved. And I'm just like mortified. I'm like, what in the world? This is totally not camping. But looking back on it, it's totally my family. Like that memory, even though it was embarrassing at the moment, is such a fun memory to have. And I'm so glad that my parents took the time to invest in my sister and I and want to be with us and just learn from us, and we learn from them. And so in the end, it's a memory that just makes me giggle. But at the time, I was like, seriously, this is not camping. This is the embarrassing your child as much as you possibly can. So, yeah. A vacation mishap. Well, whenever I think of vacation with my family, I always think my sister getting in trouble. So, my sister, every time we went on vacation, had to explore or do something that made the vacation interesting. So, I remember we went to Disney World. It was a huge deal. We had saved up for over a year. My parents, my grandparents, my uncle, my sister and I, we were in a 15-passenger van, all drove down to Florida, and we arrive at the Disney World Hotel. I'm so excited. My sister, I think she was like 3 or 4, I can't remember her exact age, runs in as my mom's in the bathroom, and outside the bathroom is that closet, right, that most hotels have. But these closet doors were the kind that folded in on each other, and they were glass. And what does she do? The closet was folded, so there was the groove in the door. She sticks her thumb in this hole and closes the door on it and starts screaming because, of course, she hurt her thumb, and it's like swelling, like 4 or 5 times the size it's supposed to be. Turns black and blue instantly. She can't bend it. So our first night in Disney World was spent at the ER with my sister. And then we couldn't do half the stuff we wanted to do because she couldn't get stuff wet. So my parents did a good job. I mean, I didn't know this. I had a blast, but it was just one of those things where it's like, oh my goodness. So then a couple years later, we're in Atlanta, Georgia for a soccer tournament with her over Thanksgiving. I'm already upset that we're not having our traditional Thanksgiving because of my sister. And the first game of the tournament, it's not her fault, but she steps in a hole on the field and twists her ankle. So the whole tournament, she sits on the sidelines because of her ankle. So the poor girl, I mean, I wasn't hurt, but she tends to get hurt on vacations. So I feel really bad. But, yeah, so that's a vacation mishap. Let's see. We're almost there. 2 more. A day that everything went wrong. I've had a couple of those, but I'm really not going to disclose it because my going wrong is beyond, I mean, you guys, I'll depress you. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to pull my I'm making this video card and bypass that. So the last one is number 15, a time you were surprised. Let me think here. I've been surprised several times. I am a hard person to surprise if someone tries to hint at it because I pick up on people not acting their normal self. So if they're like trying to delay me or stall me or ask me questions to get answers that they normally don't ask, I pick up on that. But I would have to say the time I was surprised the most was when my husband proposed. He and I decided 9 months into our relationship that basically we were going to get married. And we were college students, and we didn't want to get married in college. We had a couple friends who did. We knew we needed to finish. I knew myself that I would not finish if I got married. It would just be too much to try and pay bills and have a life. I was already working 3 jobs to pay for school. So anyway, that's getting ahead of myself. So we had decided, we started dating mid-sophomore year in college. We decided probably by Christmas junior year that we were going to get married. And he had already talked to my dad, the gentleman that he is, and got permission, and now we were just continuing to get to know each other and go to each other's families' homes and just enjoying life and enjoying being a college student. However, my mom told me that he had already had this conversation with my dad. So in my head, that was even a step further than Tim and I deciding we were going to get married. In my head, that meant he's going to ask. So from like December of my junior year, all the way, through the summer, through, parts of my senior year, every single time we were going to do anything special, I was thinking it was going to be him proposing. I mean, he went to Colorado for a couple months on a school semester, and he had flown me out there to visit during a weekend, and I was like, oh, this is going to be the time he's going to propose, and he didn't. And so I was just getting frustrated because I'm like, I thought we talked about this. You've already talked to your dad. This is our plan. And so now I was at the point my senior year where I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, every time that we go out, I keep thinking he's going to propose and he's not. So we had planned in September, school started right around Labor Day. We had planned to go out on a date. It was a Friday night, and there's a 5-star restaurant that we cannot afford. We're college students at the time, but we can't afford the dessert there. And we really liked, they had a dessert sampler. So we were going to make dinner at the apartment. I lived with a bunch of other girls in a college apartment. And so he came over, and I did not realize that the girls weren't going to be there. And so they weren't. And so I was like, oh, this is great. We'll be alone. He made dinner for me. One of our favorite meals. It was a stir-fry meal at the time. And then I went back to my room to get ready. And as I'm ironing my shirt, he's out in the living room. I don't know, he was watching TV or something. I'm thinking to myself, Jennifer, stop it. He is not going to propose. Stop it. This is not the night. You do this to yourself. I'm literally moving my mouth like as I'm talking to myself saying this because I'm so tired of almost a year of waiting and it not happening. And I'm just like, you need to stop. You need to just enjoy this relationship. You both know where you're at. There's no worry, and just enjoy it. And so I got dressed, got my makeup on, and we're ready to go out. And as I go out to the living room, he says, hey, why don't you sit down for a minute? So I'm like, sure. So we sat down, and I'm going to save the whole story for a different time. But he ended up proposing right then and there. And I was so shocked. It was out of the blue. And I was beyond words. Like, I couldn't speak. And I ended up forgetting. I gave him the wrong hand to put the ring on. We laughed about that. I ended up forgetting to tell him yes. So by the time I was done crying, he's like, so is this a yes? So yeah, it was really special. It's a great story. I'll save that for another drill with me time. But yeah, so I was definitely surprised. I had worked myself up so much that this was not going to happen that particular night, that when it did happen, I was in complete shock. So, yeah, so that is definitely a time I was surprised. Um, so that's the end of the questions for the drill with me. And I'm wondering, are there any stories that you have that you want to share that maybe you answer these questions down below in the comments, and let us get to know you as we grow our community. I would love to hear that from you guys. And I just thank you guys for listening and being a part of my journey and getting to learn about diamond painting and the pros and the cons and where to go. Is there anything that you, now that you've made it to the end of the drill with me, anything that you want me to experience, try out, learn, something that you've learned yourself that you'd like to share with me? I would love to hear it in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new and you want to subscribe, I'd love to have you as part of our subscription family. And I just thank you so much for the time that we've shared together. So until we meet again, I bid you adieu, wish you a great evening, and be blessed. Bye.